All right. We're live on the website and we're ready to roll. So thanks for joining us at the Treasure Map meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you'd please join us in a moment of silence followed by the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. All right, welcome to the Treasure Map meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is an open speaker meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. We're glad you are all here, especially newcomers. In keeping with our singleness of purpose and our third tradition, which states the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking, we ask that all who participate confine their discussion to their problems with alcohol. The AA Preamble, reprinted with permission by Grapevine, Inc. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and to help other alcoholics achieve sobriety. We want to send a special welcome to all of you joining us tonight. We will continue with our online-only meeting at the Treasure Map at least through May, and we'll resume the meeting at Faith Lutheran Church as soon as possible, given the current conditions. If this is your first time participating in the Treasure Map meeting, we're very glad you're here. If you're new and are looking for help, you can send us a message on our Treasure Map group Facebook page, or you can call or text me. My name is Scott. My cell phone number is 605-370-8907. And if you're on this call, if you're in this meeting, please feel free to share the meeting link with anyone in AA. All are welcome. Now, if you would please welcome Todd to read How It Works from Chapter 5 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Take it over, Todd.
Thanks, Scott. My name's Todd. I am an alcoholic.
Hey, Todd.
How it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunate. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders. But many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. As some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember, we deal with alcohol. Cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us, but there is one who has all power, and that one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which we are suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed, and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take a personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order! I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we are alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if He were sought.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. The 7th tradition states that every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. If you don't, last week Mike made the pitch. If this is your home group, feel free to go onto our website and do the 7th tradition. But we're going to be okay through this. But there are some other meetings, maybe your home group or other places that you attend meetings that aren't having meetings and aren't having money put in the basket every day and every week. So
is now exiting.
If you if you can find a way to figure out how to help some of those places, that would be great. That's the plug on the 7th tradition. Now, please welcome Amy to read the 12 traditions.
Amy, alcoholic.
Hey, Amy.
The 12 traditions. 1, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. 2, for our group purpose, there is one ultimate authority, a loving God as He may express Himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. 3, the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4, each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5, each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6, an AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8, Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9, AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10, Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and film. 12, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities.
Thank you, Amy. Tonight's meeting is an open speaker meeting focusing on recovery from alcoholism through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Please respect our tradition of anonymity. Our speakers tonight are Greg M. from Sioux Falls, our 15-minute speaker, and Ben J. from Charlotte, North Carolina, our 45-minute speaker. So please join me in welcoming our 15-minute speaker, Greg from Sioux Falls. Take it away, Greg.
Thank you, Scott. My name is Greg Muntz, and I'm an alcoholic. First of all, just want to say a big thank you to Scott and Mike and the rest of the folks over at the Treasure Map meeting for allowing me the opportunity to be able to share with you tonight. This is a really great opportunity. I know that there was a friend of mine that gave a talk some years back, and I know that one thing that he said at the beginning that struck me, and it was one of the best talks I think I've heard, is that he said, it's always easy to get up and give a good talk when everything is going really well. And I can certainly understand that. And sometimes, like times like now that we're going through, not always so easy because things are not always going so well for many of us right now. There's a very, unforeseen a lot of things, and we have to rely and trust on God, I think, more than ever. So, and certainly what I would say though with that is that, man, I can either choose to focus on the solution or I can focus on the problem. And there's just so much good things like this that are part of the solution that I'm glad to be a part of tonight. And again, so thanks so much for allowing me to be on this meeting with you guys tonight. So just to share a little bit of background and share a little bit to let you know that I definitely do qualify to be here. I'll share a little bit, and I'll try and keep the drunk part of the story here as short as possible. Needless to say that, one of the first memories that I have is that we moved to a small town about 20 miles east of here, Sioux Falls, when I was in 4th grade. And I know that even before that, I always had this sort of feeling of being alone and not really being able to fit in. And that seemed to intensify when I moved there. What I didn't realize, what I was really feeling was I was really feeling a lot of fear. I didn't really know that that's what it was at the time. But one nice thing that was able to happen for me a few years later, when I was in middle school, a friend of mine and I were able to get someone to buy us a 12-pack of beer. And I know that the first night that we got into that and drank that, things were wonderful. All of a sudden, I was no longer shy. All of a sudden, I fit in everywhere. I could talk to anyone, and things were really nice. And I began to have a sense that, man, I really am finally good at something, because I always felt at times that I wasn't good enough and I wasn't going to measure up. And finally, this was something, man, I could really do with the best of them. So it was something that was really, really good for a period of time. And unfortunately for me, I began to do some things that would harm some people. There was the fun times as I became known as drag tag and the life of the party. Soon some of those things began to fade, and I began to hurt people as a result of my actions while drinking, and sometimes even when not drinking. But I began to do a lot of bad things and hurt some people. And I know that I got my first DWI. I was in a serious car accident, totaled the car. And as a result of that DWI, one of the things that I had to do is I had to go to DWI school. And in there, I had to fill out a questionnaire. And in that questionnaire, I filled out the lady, the counselor lady, or whatever position she had there. She said that she saw some warning signs there, some things that I should look out for. And I remember thinking, well, of course she's going to think that, because, maybe if she can get me to do something else, she can get a little bit of a kickback. And I always had sort of this view thinking that somebody had it out for me. And I don't think that is the case now, but I know that that's what I thought for a long time. I always thought that people had it out for me. But I know that she had given me a challenge. She gave me a challenge that she said, when you go out tonight, I want you to try and drink 3 drinks. And after you've had those 3, I want you to try and stop. And I remember that I thought, man, I can do this. If I put my mind to something, I can do it. And I really didn't like this lady, and I thought that, I could prove her wrong. And so when I went out that night, I tried to cheat, and I got the extra. She didn't say what size of the 3 that I could get. I got the extra large ones, and I know that I drank those 3 drinks, and I remember that she had said that, and I thought of that, and I thought, man, I'd love to stop, and I thought, I just absolutely can't. I can't. As much as I'd like to prove her wrong, I can't do it. And ironically enough, I was thinking about that a little earlier today. That very same experiment is shared in our big book of Alcoholics Anonymous that actually talks about, if you're not sure if you're an alcoholic or not, try to drink and stop abruptly. Try it more than once. It will not take long for you to decide if you're honest with yourself. And that was really the first instance for me that indeed there was something different about the way that I drank. I wasn't yet to the point that, man, I'm really willing to do anything about this yet, because I thought I was still young, had some good years in front of me. And so I thought really the problem was maybe that I wasn't hanging around the people that were drinking like me. And so if they were going to drink like me, I would spend time with them. And if not, I wasn't going to spend much time with them. And so that continued, and I continued to harm others and continued to get in trouble. And it, for a while, even came up with the idea that driving was the problem. It was okay if I drank as long as I didn't drive. Well, I couldn't drink or drive, or I couldn't drive for a while because I didn't have a car or a license. I eventually got those things back a few months later. And then was in another serious car accident, and this time with another family, and some other people were hurt in this car accident. Fortunately, not seriously, although definitely that is a miracle of God that it was not seriously, because certainly the way that it happened, I have to believe that it was an act of grace that it wasn't. It certainly it could have been. But as a result of that, I remember that the next morning I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I mean, I was definitely very, very depressed, very down. And I know that someone called and said, "What are we going to do about this?" And talked to me about going into a treatment center at that time. I thought, even despite all the trouble that I knew that I was in and everything that I had done, I thought, well, geez, maybe I could see going to a treatment center, but, well, already tonight you want me to go? And trying to weasel my way out of it and trying to extend it so that I wouldn't have to go right away. Luckily for me, I did end up there that night, and I spent a little over a month in that treatment center and got out, and still had this idea that if I could just go for a year without drinking. And I had already had that little over a month there. I was also sentenced to 3 months in county jail. After I spent that time, I thought, geez, I got a pretty good start. If I can go for a year, anyone who can go for a year without drinking can't be an alcoholic. And so that was my goal. And so I was court sentenced to go to these things called Alcoholics Anonymous. And I would go to them and get my slip signed. I didn't follow any of the suggestions that they had. And, eventually after 9.5 months of doing that, I found myself at a party, and a friend of mine came up to me with a glass of beer and said that he wanted the old Greg back. And again, there's always been this part of me that didn't want to disappoint or didn't want to make people mad. So I said, okay. And I took it. And then that night, remember very little of what I did after 9.5 months of staying dry. I remember very little of what I did the rest of that night. Fortunately for me is that I was still sentenced to go to these meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous and get the slip signed. So for the next 6 months, it was a very, very miserable time. I continued to do that. I got those court slips signed, and then I would go out on the weekends and drink. And the strange thing that happened as a result, though, there was that every weekend when I went out and drank, I remembered that feeling that me and that guy had that first night that we had got that 12-pack. And I was never, ever able to regain that again. Because I had been to Alcoholics Anonymous and I saw and witnessed people that had something going on and something that I didn't have. And that if it didn't do anything else, it certainly had messed up my drinking. Fortunately for me, I went to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous on October 31st, Halloween night of 1988, with the intention of getting that court slip signed and getting out of there that night. And God saw a lot more in store for me that night than I saw for myself, because as it would be, there was about half the people in that room were sharing how they had been doing the same thing, and about half of them had not. One of them that had not made an offer. He said, if there's anyone here tonight that needs help, he said, I'm here. And that was enough of an opening. It's always been extremely hard and still can be for me at times today to reach out and ask for help. And that gentleman offering up that made at least enough of a opening for me that I knew that I had watched him and I had seen that he was definitely someone that had some things going on and some peace and some serenity and was staying sober between meetings. And I asked him to be my sponsor, and we began to go through the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I just remember that he was so patient with me, and I didn't understand it. It almost seemed to me as it was written in a different language. He was very, very patient, very kind and tolerant with me, and brought me through the first part of that. And I know that we had got through step 5. And the gentleman that was my first sponsor, his name was Bruce. He was originally from Great Falls, Montana. And he made a decision to move back there. And so when he moved back, I thought that Bruce was so wonderful that there's no way that anyone was going to be able to take his place. And so for the next 2 years in Alcoholics Anonymous, I stumbled around, going to meetings, sharing, not really doing anything. And I really, really suffered for the next 2 years. Fortunately for me, one night I went to a meeting, just as I had been doing, going about once a week, sharing a little bit. And it was that night again that I knew that, hey, what I'm doing now isn't working. Life is pretty miserable. And I asked for help. Again, asked for another sponsor. That sponsor didn't work out, but he led me to another sponsor, Eric. And Eric began to walk me through the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it turned out that he would save my life. And I know that one of the big things that we did is, in going through the steps, is that I got a chance to try and make right some of these wrongs, some of these people that I had harmed. And I know that, at the top of that list had to be my parents, because I had caused them a great deal of harm. And I know that I had destroyed and totaled vehicles of theirs, caused them lots of monetary, emotional, mental, all kinds of damage. And I just remember that was a great experience, that when I got to sit down with my mother and father and discuss things and ask what, if anything, that I could do to make this right. And I was willing to financially do whatever, and my dad didn't want that, but what he really wanted was he wanted me to continue, and he wanted me to be a part of their lives. And that was a very, very unexpected gift. I did also get a chance to, with that family that I was in the accident with, I did get a chance to try and make that right, and how in the world, like I said, I don't have time to go into that full experience, but I will share a little bit of the amend process with that. Is that I know that I had looked, because they live in a different state, and my first attempt was that I wrote them a letter, and I remember that I had my sponsor look at it, and he had me rewrite it, and I rewrote it a few times, and then his sponsor looked at it, and one thing that he said is that he goes, "Why is it that you're doing this?" And I, explained, going through the steps, and then he pointed out a line in the big book that is always, whenever I've wondered why it is that I'm doing an amend, or why am I doing this, it says in there, it says, simply that we will never overcome drinking until we have done our utmost to straighten out the past. And that's something that I'm reminded of, even today, as I try and make amends, is that, that's what I'm there to do, is there to sweep off my side of the street. And fortunately, I was able to talk to these people and try and make that situation right. And I don't know if it completely can ever be right, but I know that one goal they had is that, for me to try and keep this from happening to somebody else. And I've tried to take that seriously and tried to live up to that. I know I'm getting a little bit short on time here, so I will just try and wrap it up. But I will say that one other quick experience, and then I'll try and wrap it up, is that, then, that Eric and I, some things happened and we began to kind of not have contact, and I still had some other people that I would talk to, and occasionally, and what my big thing was is always kind of explaining what was going on with me, telling what was going on with me, sharing what was going on with me with somebody else. But it wasn't, other than I was still going to the Minnehaha County Jail and doing a jail meeting about once a week, but I really wasn't making too much of an effort to sponsor anyone, reach out to anyone. And one night, somebody that I respect, in fact, a gentleman that had shared the story about sometimes it being difficult to share and give a good talk when things are not always going that good. And I have much respect for that gentleman. He pulled me aside after the meeting and confronted me on a few of those things and pointed out to me the importance and just the real need to try and help others. And it was that time that I knew that I needed to get a sponsor again, and then I contacted Mike Donnelly, and Mike and I have been friends for several years, and we talked for quite a while, and he led me to a gentleman named Will that is now currently my sponsor, and it's been really nice. I know that Will gives me assignments and he gives me things, and I'm able to be sponsored. And sometimes I don't always jump on the things, but I always do them. And I know that one of those things in particular was that he suggested in an effort to be more helpful to people that I would get some business cards, and that I would really make an effort to go up to new people at meetings and give them that card, and then also not just to leave it there though, but to get their number, and then I was the one that followed up with them. I didn't wait for them to follow up with me. And that's been a huge part of this last part of my recovery and I continue to do that today. I continue to reach out to new guys and continue to help them, because that's where I found the real peace in this thing. It's not so much worrying about my problems and everything that's going on with me, but when I can get out of myself and reach out and help others. So I know it's kind of was a little bit all over the place here, but in the interest of time, and I know that we have a great speaker coming up here, I think I will close with that. And thank you so much again for giving me the opportunity to be of service tonight. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Greg. Great job. We appreciate you sharing. And everybody on online here, we're going to take a 5-minute break. So we're going to come back. Actually, let's make it 3 minutes so everybody can take a little break here. 7:30. We'll start at 7:30 and have Ben from Charlotte, North Carolina. Thanks. All right, welcome back. I'm going to introduce our speaker here. Ben is from Charlotte, North Carolina, and has taken his time to come and talk to us tonight. So let's welcome Ben.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. My name is Ben. I'm an alcoholic. How's it going tonight? I hope you're all doing well and sheltering in place and doing all this good stuff we're supposed to be doing right now. Hope you'll bear with me. It's weird to be in a room talking to yourself. I wish I could see all your faces, but we're learning how to deal with this technology that we have that'll allow us to stay in touch and stay connected to each other. So I am grateful for that. My sobriety date is January 2nd, 2007. I have a sponsor, and he has a sponsor, and I'll talk some more about that later. I guess I'll kind of start at the beginning and kind of go from there. I was born January 27, 1957 in Memphis, Tennessee. My dad worked for one of the major airlines, and we would move every few years as he would chase job opportunities. So I was born in Memphis. We moved to Los Angeles, moved to Long Island, New York, moved to Michigan, moved back to Long Island, New York, and that all happened kind of before I was 13 years old. So we moved around a fair amount, and during those early years, I was like the new kid in school a lot, I guess. And I don't know if that contributed to me feeling like uncomfortable and not belonging with the in crowd, but I did have those feelings kind of later on in life. My family was a kind of a middle class family. My father had a pretty decent job and never wanted for anything. Traditional 1960s. Dad worked, mom stayed home and was a housewife and cooked and took care of us kids and all that stuff. Pretty normal childhood. Although I will say that there is a lot of heavy drinking in my family. On all sides, maternal and paternal sides, both of my parents. And I can remember even as a kid, first off, just being at family events, and there was always alcohol present. It was always a part of it. And oftentimes overindulging happened and incidents and arguments and stuff like that happening. And it's kind of witnessing the drama that came along with some heavy alcohol use. And I kind of thought, I guess, because it was around me, I kind of thought that was normal. By this time I'm living on Long Island, New York. I'm in junior high school. We used to call it back then. They call it middle school nowadays. 13 years old. Had my first drink. Me and my friend Bob Howell would hang out, and if we got some money together, his older brothers would buy our alcohol for us. So we loved doing that, and also smoking some pot along with that. Yes, there's some other substances in my story. Alcohol is a common thread that stayed with me throughout my drinking career. And even from the very beginning, I always felt like, the purpose of drinking was to get drunk, was to party, to have a good time, to get a buzz on. So proceeding like that would get intoxicated when we could get our hands on the combination of some money and someone willing to acquire it for us, or swipe some of our parents' alcohol or do whatever. And this continued through high school. I got my first part-time job. Now I had some money in my pocket, so alcohol was available and easy to get my hands on, and kind of became a regular part of my life. I would say, early on, I was what you would call a heavy drinker, a binge drinker. Tough to say, like when did I cross the line into alcoholic drinking? don't exactly know, and we'll talk more about that as we get a little deeper into my story. Went to college. College was awesome because I was away from home, away from the prying eyes of my parents, away from my mother going, what time did you get home last night? And all that stuff. And found that in college I could pretty much drink the way I wanted to drink and get C's and pass and stay in school without setting any records, without ever coming close to making the dean's list or anything like that. Got a job. I'm old enough that we actually had a bar in the student union on the campus. I got a job bartending there, and that was really cool because I got to learn about all kinds of other alcohol that I hadn't been exposed to. I got to drink for free, and it was a cool job. So that kind of started another common thread of kind of justifying or my drinking, in my own mind at least, by, knowing a lot about alcohol and being able to talk about different kinds of wine, beer, liquor, and stuff like that, and why you drink this and why you drink that and what it's for. And that kind of made me somehow feel like I was in control. Finished college, and at this point, I guess I'm what you call a binge drinker. I get out of college. I don't pursue work in the field that I went to college for. In fact, I go home, I go back to Long Island and get a job as a bartender in a local bar down on Main Street in the town that I'm from. And my parents were not thrilled. I'm working 5 nights a week in the bar, drinking and going out to bars the other 2 nights a week. And this went on for a while, culminating in me driving home one night early in the morning, and I passed out. I was driving my first car that I saved like 3 years to buy. It was my pride and joy. And I passed out and drove into a parked car around the block from my parents' house. And the crash kind of woke up the neighbors. It's probably 5 o'clock in the morning. And I woke up because my face bounced off the windshield. And I realized, oh my gosh, the police are going to be here. The lights are coming on in front of people's houses. And so I had an empty 6-pack holder. I used it to take the empties from the floor of my car and went over to throw it in the trash can that was in front of somebody's driveway, and a police car pulls up. And the cop says, you better get rid of that beer stuff before the other cars get here. And this is, probably 1981, and the cop took my insurance information and gave me a ride home, and that was the end of it. No DUI, no nothing. I realized that this is not, I realized even then that this is not a sustainable lifestyle. So I get semi-serious. I quit the bar. I get my first, what I would call like real job. I'm working in retail management, and things are going okay. I move into that. I get a sales job. I meet my wife. We get married in 1985, and I pursue a job opportunity that takes me down to Charlotte, North Carolina. At this point, I was, really serious and excited about the job opportunity that I had, and it was really nose to the grindstone stuff. Really wanted to prove myself, and for whatever reason, I was able to kind of put the drinking on the back burner. I would have the occasion, on the weekends, do some partying, but no drinking during the week, and did well. Progressed in my career. We were blessed with 2 kids, and things are going okay. So this is now I am 35, 40, 45 years old, and things are going okay. But as I start getting older, I'm drinking like when I drink, it's less and less about socializing. I'm not like going out with friends. I'm drinking at home on the weekends. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not hanging out with any friends. And I can remember, and I'm really a weekend warrior, binge drinker type guy. The weekend starts on Thursday night and ends on Sunday night. Sometimes it extends, a day one way or the other. And the whole week is now starting to revolve around the cycle of planning to drink, getting the alcohol lined up, making sure I got enough to get me through the weekend, and dealing with the hangover on Monday, and just kind of gritting my teeth and trying to get through till Thursday when the weekend starts, and kind of in that cycle. I'm also a salesperson, and I travel as part of my job, so I can remember just incidents, going out to meet a customer in another state, being in a town that I'm not familiar with, taking a customer out to dinner, having a couple beers at dinner with a customer, which was really just the right amount to set off that phenomenon of craving. So at that point, I wanted to get rid of the customer so I could pick up a 12-pack and maybe some liquor and take it back to my hotel room and get a good buzz on, and did that quite a bit. And as I got older, as I got into my late 40s, I started having blackouts, which were really freaky. Like, I remember like being at home and watching a movie with my wife, on video, and and her the next day going like, "Wasn't that crazy, that part in the movie?" And I'd just be like, "I don't remember anything about that movie. I couldn't tell you a single thing about the plot," and that was freaking me out. Just having like 4 and 5 hour blocks of time where nothing would happen. My wife and I had the kind of relationship too. We would party together and we would drink together, and we both became pretty heavy drinkers. And in a way, I think we kind of enabled each other. She never really. There were times I knew when she, really overindulged and had stuff happen, and I certainly did the same. I can remember being at neighborhood parties and making a fool out of myself, stumbling, falling down drunk, slurring my words, and being really embarrassed about it. But she never gave me grief about it. It was kind of like an unspoken agreement that we had, like, you don't mess with my drinking and I won't mess with your drinking. December 2006, my wife came to talk to me, and she was crying, and she basically said she can't stop drinking. I don't know what to do. I can't stop drinking. I didn't want to drink today, but I did, and it's not the first time, and I can't seem to stop. And I knew that I was having similar things going on, but I wasn't ready to talk about it or really face up to it. But my idea was, I'm going to take you to an AA meeting. So, got online, found out there was an AA meeting about 2 miles from our house at this church, and went over there, and man, that put us on a path that changed everything. So, was really fortunate to find an AA group right off the bat that was a really, really good fit. After they had these beginner meetings, that they would all kind of get together in the beginning and do the readings, and then they'd split off and have a beginner meeting in another room that was led by people that had some sobriety, and those were really helpful for me to get my mind around, what's this program about. I came into AA knowing really nothing about what AA was. I thought it was some kind of program that's going to show you how to not drink. Didn't know, anything about it. And, but the people were really friendly. The people were really helpful. And, I felt encouraged to keep coming back. So we did. And, I just went to meetings for about a month without locating a sponsor, because for some reason I felt it was really important that I find, the perfect sponsor. I didn't want to screw up and get less than a perfect sponsor, because, I'm at this point, I'm 50 years old, and I don't want to mess this up. I had somebody explain to me, it's not like selecting a wife. Just get a sponsor and get going with this thing. I did get my first sponsor, John, and he was what I would call a big book thumper, which I kind of wanted. He's somebody that actually taught and led big book studies and knew a lot of detail and background. He knew the book inside and out, and knew a lot of detail and background about how the program came together and all that, and was really glad to have John as my sponsor and take me through the steps. And I had plenty of evidence, that I was powerless over alcohol and my life was unmanageable, because my whole life had become, getting myself situated so that I could put myself in a position that I could drink the way I wanted to drink, which was, to oblivion. And so I had step one. Yeah, I had plenty of evidence for that. Step two, power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Early on, that kind of freaked me out a little bit. I was never a religious person. I even at one point when our kids were little, when our kids were born, I felt like we didn't go to church at all, and I felt like we need to get our kids baptized. We need to have some kind of a religious background. So we joined. We did some looking around. We joined a local church, and we went to church for about 2 years, and I ended up going to talk to the pastor and saying, like, I just don't get this. I don't understand why. Your sermons are good and they're always helpful messages and they're uplifting and all that, but these people here seem to be getting some kind of a connection with that I'm not getting. It's like there's a radio station that I'm not tuned into. Everybody else has got the headphones and the secret code. But I'm not getting it. I'm not getting a spiritual feeling. I'm getting maybe some morality lessons from your sermons, but that's as far as it's going. And he suggested taking a break, and I did, and I never went back. So here I am, 12, 13 years later at an AA meeting, and they're telling me about, power greater than myself, and I got to make a decision to turn my lives over to the care of God as we understand Him, and it was really, and it's funny too, because I'm down here in the middle of the Bible Belt, and being not a religious person all this time, I'm pretty defensive around people that are religious, but I would say early on, due to the fellowship and the people that I met at these meetings, the first meetings that I went to, people that I came across that had things that I wanted, that had an attitude about them that I admired, they told me, like, don't sweat that. this will work itself out. They started talking to me about, you know, their experience with spirituality, and it kind of put my mind at rest. But I definitely had my guard up in the beginning that this was going to be some kind of holy roller program, and the hymnals are going to come out, and the collection plate's going to go around, and the collection plate did go around, but it's under a whole different context, so that was fine. Working the steps was really an amazing process, because like kind of one builds off the other to get me to the point where I can have a spiritual awakening, and I can start to develop, you know, my concept of what my higher power is, and who my higher power is, and that was a pretty interesting process. I moved on to doing a 4-step doing my 4-step and writing out that inventory, and then sitting down with my sponsor and doing my 5th step. And he was, I had such a distorted view of myself, because either I was down on myself. I criticized myself a lot. I felt like I was a piece of crap in a lot of areas. And when we started going through, you know, things that I did, my character defects, things I'm ashamed of, things I need to make amends to people about, you know, my sponsor helped me put things in context. You know, if you've got the scale of good and bad people, and down in the lower end of the scale you have somebody like Adolf Hitler, and then up at the top you got somebody like Mother Teresa. Honestly, I'm really kind of somewhere in the middle. I'm really not that bad a guy, but I don't treat myself like that. I tend to beat up myself and feel less than. And really, when it boils down to it, I've got a lot of fear, a lot of self-centered fear. But that was what a learning process, and I can remember how that felt when I sat down for my 6th step and spent some quiet time and looked over and thought about what I did, and doing my 7th step. I really felt like, yeah, I did the steps as best I could so far, and I started to feel, you know, there is a higher power. You know, early on, I think, you know, for me, the higher power, and you guys have heard this before, but the higher power for me was that fellowship, was a group of people, and certainly, and especially specific ones who had something that I wanted, that told me, you know, keep working these steps, keep coming back, get a sponsor, and this stuff is going to sort itself out. Just have some faith. And so that was incredible. I would be remiss if I didn't mention reading We Agnostics for the first time, and I've gone back and read it many times since then. What a beautifully written chapter, incredible, and it really helped me to start to develop my concept of you know, who my higher power is and what that's about, and boy, life changing. I moved on to making my amends, and that was a humbling process. One of the I think the most meaningful of my amends for me were the amends I made to my kids. At this time, my kids are like 13 and 15 years old. They're old enough to know what Dad's talking about when he says he's got a problem with alcohol. They're old enough to know, you know, when I told them that, you know, there are times when I wasn't as good a father to you as I could have been. There are times when I should have done stuff for you that I didn't because I cared more about drinking. And by the way, there's a history of alcoholism in our family, and this could affect you someday. And hopefully kind of maybe break that chain a little bit and have them at least be conscious of what it is. That was a powerful amends. Having kind of gotten through the steps, you know, I continued to go to meetings, started to seek out, you know, service work. So one of the things that I did for a long time was take a meeting into the county jail here. Did it for about 8 years. That was really powerful. Sitting in it, they would put us in this like rec room down in the cell block, and guys would come in and sit down, and I would be, you know, sitting in a room with somebody who got a DUI 2 days ago, and their families. This is the third time, and their family's not bailing them out of jail, and they're just like don't even know how they got there. It was funny because I used to. It was like a 45-minute drive to go out to the jail. And I used to dread it sometimes because it's like, man, I got to drive all the way out there. But I always came back grateful because I knew that it could have easily been me sitting in an orange jumpsuit in that jail trying to get bailed out. So that was really helpful for my sobriety and really rewarding. I also started getting involved with Matt Talbot retreats. And Matt Talbot retreats they're not AA per se, but they are men's spiritual retreats that with AA connection, where there's a group of men and we get together and we go up to a retreat lodge up in the mountains and we spend a weekend talking about our program, talking about our spirituality, and basically working on our spirituality, working to improve our conscious contact, you know. And you know, years ago, if you would have told me that, you know, before I came into this program, that I'd be going up to the mountains for a weekend to talk about God with a bunch of other men, I would have laughed in your face. But there have been some of the most powerful and moving experiences. The first one I went to, I was like a year sober, and I've gone at least once a year. I held twice a year since then. That's how I came across Michael Donnelly, as a matter of fact. Michael's been kind enough to come and be our retreat master at a few of these retreats. So I got to the point now where I've worked the steps. I'm doing service work, and I've even started sponsoring some guys. I became one of those guys that's going in, that's chairing that beginner meeting, that's talking to those newcomers, that's having guys ask me to sponsor them. I picked up sponsees from going to the jail. I picked up 2 or 3 different inmates that I sponsored over the years. One of them is stay sober, actually. I still see him. So, you know, things are going good. But I was. It's funny. I'm doing a step study now, and we're doing the part. We just read the part where they're talking about how we all share a common peril, and we're the passengers on a luxury liner that sank, and we're all in those lifeboats together. And I feel like I at this point in my sobriety, I was doing a good job of like staying, in the middle of the boat and doing a lot of service work, going to a lot of meetings, sponsoring some guys, doing service work, and kind of like our previous speaker talked about, I got to a point where things are going really good, and things just kind of tapered off. I started talking. My sponsor had some changes going on in his life and was less available, harder to get a hold of. We kind of drifted apart. I still kept going to meetings, but I'm sponsoring one guy, and then he had stuff going on, and instead of we go from talking a couple times a week to once a month to maybe grabbing dinner every now and then to hardly seeing each other at all. I'm still going to meetings, and I'm letting my program just kind of it's kind of withering up, but it's happening over such a period of time. I'm becoming complacent, and it's just little by little, nothing really noticeable. It's not like I woke up one morning and said, this AA stuff is taking up too much of my time, I'm going to cut back. It just kind of happened bit by bit. And I was smiling when our previous speaker was talking about his experience. But I had a similar thing happen. I finally had. One of the things I've been fortunate for is that my home group, the Eye Opener group, which meets on Saturday mornings in TGK, South Carolina, it's a men's group. I've been going to this. It's been in my home group for 12 years or 13 years, and I've got some really good friends in there and guys that really care about me. And that's precious. And one of these guys grabbed me and said, "Hey Ben, let's talk. What's going on with you? Who are you sponsoring? Who's your sponsor?" And he was right. He was right. I was suffering. I don't think I came close to drinking, but I was definitely not experiencing that feeling of peace and serenity that this program can give us. And I was definitely struggling with some fears and struggling with complacency. And so I went out and got a new sponsor. And I'm in the process of going through the steps with that sponsor right now. I've been through the steps a number of times, I've done a number of step studies, but I feel it's helpful for me to go through the steps periodically. And B, I think it's a great way for my sponsor and I to get to know each other better. So that's been a really helpful process. And he's really had me focusing on the inventory part. I've been doing inventorying now for about 6 weeks, and it's funny because the stuff I was inventorying about were I spending a lot of time on fears. I've always struggled my whole life with fear. It's funny because I'm a big guy. I'm like 6'3", 250-pound guy, and I'm not afraid. I can look like and act like I'm not afraid, but I'm really afraid inside. And it's really helpful to write this stuff out, And so I've written a few pages on fears and why and what do I fear and why do I fear it, and it's really helpful. And then this coronavirus thing came along and it's kind of rewriting that whole list. Those things that I was really afraid of seem a lot less scary now, and they're replaced with some new fears. So definitely have got some work to do in that area. But really grateful that I had friends in AA that cared enough about me to point out to me that where they thought I might not be doing well, and to help me out, and to have a new sponsor now. And I feel like renewed in the program. And I've got myself a new sponsee recently too. Guy came up and he liked what I shared in some meetings, and he was new to Charlotte, and I guess he picked up on that I had spent some time in New York, and he was comfortable and asked me to be his sponsor. So that's really been a blessing too. So I feel like I'm starting to climb back into the middle part of that lifeboat again, and it feels really good. I also, during this time that I talked about, one of the things I contributed to it was I moved to another part. I moved like at the opposite side of Charlotte. Charlotte's a pretty good-sized town, so I moved about 25 miles away from where I used to live. So I still drive down there every Saturday morning to go to my men's meeting. But I wasn't going to a lot of meetings around here, and I up until recently I had rectified that. Now I'm doing meetings online, which has been a pretty interesting experience. Get to understand how to work Zoom. I also feel really blessed because I'm part of a good AA community. These are trying times that we're in. The guys in my home group have been awesome. There's a group of us. We get together every morning at 7:30, and we meditate. And a couple of the guys are really experienced meditators. They've actually led classes like in mindfulness meditation and things of that nature. And when they combine their knowledge with their knowledge of the program and applying weaving that into a meditation, into a guided meditation, it's really powerful. And I found it really helpful and a really good way to start the day during these difficult times. Where did that go? I was looking for. And bear with me a second here. So we met a couple days ago, and to do this meditation session, and Don, who's somebody I respect a tremendous amount, led the meditation, and he read this part of the book to us, and then we did a meditation centered around it. I'm going to read this. I'm on page 67 of the big book, and talk about fear. Notice the word fear is bracketed alongside difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer, and the wife. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. It was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. It set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. But did not we ourselves set the ball rolling? Sometimes we think fear ought to be classified with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble. We reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. We asked ourselves why we had them. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. Perhaps there's a better way. We think so, but we are now on a different basis. The basis of trusting and relying on God. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. We are in the world to play the role He assigns, just to the extent that we do as we think He would have us and humbly rely on Him, does He enable us to match calamity with serenity. We never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator. We can laugh at those who think spirituality the way of weakness. Paradoxically, is the way of strength. The verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. We never apologize for God. Instead, we let him demonstrate through us what he can do. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. At once we commence to outgrow fear. That was so powerful for me. Trust in God. We let him demonstrate through us what he can do. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. And that became my mantra for the last couple of days. Remove my fear and direct my attention to what he would have me be. Powerful stuff. And what a blessing. I would never, if I wasn't, part of this group and I wasn't involved with these men and I wasn't in this program, I don't know what I'd be doing. I'd probably be drinking. I'm kind of getting towards wrapping up, maybe a couple minutes early here, if that's all right with you guys. I want to thank Mike Donnelly for inviting me to speak to this group. Thank you. It means a lot. And wish you all a good evening. Thank you.
Great job, Ben. Thank you so much for sharing. We appreciate you joining us tonight, and we appreciate you sharing your story. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and want to thank our readers, Todd and Amy, and our speakers, Greg and Ben. And if you would, we are going to close with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.